Hey everybody, what's going on? And welcome back to another episode of the Court Storm College Hoops Talk podcast, which you can find right here on the Court Storm channel. We are your hosts, Kanaye and Josh, and today we're going to be giving you guys our previews for conference tournaments for all the Power 5 conferences, as well as a couple mid-majors that we're going to throw in towards the end to mix it up. I'm really excited for conference tournament play to begin. The season has been spectacular. There's a lot of teams and definitely some potentials for bid stealers to come, specifically in the MAC. Shout out Akron. We'll get to that later on. But before we get into all that today, just a couple quick messages. First, us here at the Court Storm, we've partnered with Phorm Fitness Supplements to tell you guys about the products they have to offer, whether it's fitness supplements like amino acids, creatine, protein powders, pre-workout. They have everything that you might need to sustain an active lifestyle. And if you're interested in checking out some of their products, we're going to be linking their website down below so you can view their full product directory. Also, everyone knows the algorithm's key for getting more people to see our videos, so please engage with the content you see on this channel in any way you can, whether it's liking, subscribing, or just telling other people about the Court Storm. Everything goes a really long way with influencing that algorithm, getting more people to see our videos. Be sure to turn on your post notifications so you see the latest ones that we put out. So let's get right into it and start with probably the easiest conference to pick a tournament winner in, and that is the ACC. I think it's Duke. Probably don't need to elaborate all too much on this. Duke is head over heels been the best team in the ACC all season long.
Yeah, this one feels pretty honest, and we're gonna rank this from easiest to hardest with how we're gonna predict our conference winners. I will say this, and I just mentioned this a few minutes ago to Kanaye. The ACC tournament itself is the highest seed ranking of their champions, and that's not like one. I mean like highest number. Keep in mind, 2 years ago, NC State won it as like an 8 or 9 in their conference. Duke won it in Shire's second year as like a 4. So it's rarely that first best team. And I mean, even Duke struggled to win that conference tournament last year. And I'm not going to say it happens again. This team is honestly on par with Duke from last year, if not even a little bit better. And the ACC, though, is better, though. So I will throw some shade beforehand. I will also say Duke. But Virginia looks good in a vacuum. If you get Mikal Brown Jr. hot right before March, which you probably want to do through Louisville, he's in that mix. NC State can do it all over again with a different coach and different team. And then if you're Miami or any desperate ACC team that always seems to win 1 or 2 games, like a Virginia Tech or a Cal or an SMU, like one-man teams, for example, I guess SMU's the best one with Whoopi Miller, that can just go on small runs, and if Duke falls early, all hell breaks loose. So that's the most I could say. It really could be a free-for-all like it has been the past few years, but something about this year just says Duke.
I think the only thing that's going to get in Duke's way is injuries. Last year, you mentioned they kind of struggled in that ACC tournament. I think a lot of that dealt with was attributed to Cooper Flagg. I think it was an ankle injury he sustained in the first game, I think against Georgia Tech that they played in last year's ACC tournament in Charlotte. But yeah, is there a round possibility where someone just goes nuclear, like you mentioned, Mikal Brown, a Seth Trimble maybe for UNC's sake, considering that Caleb Wilson is out the rest of the year and they're probably no longer as big of a threat as they could have been in the national landscape going into this year's NCAA tournament. So yeah, Seth Trimble maybe wills the Tar Heels to an ACC tournament title. Probably not. But yeah, Mikal Brown, Easter Ritter at Virginia. You mentioned Will Wade. Yeah, Will Wade.
Will Wade can definitely lead a team. He's known for that.
Darian Williams, all it takes for him to get hot, he can score the ball when he's got it rolling. But it's more than likely going to be Duke, and I think we're both pretty firm on that pick right now. But let's move on over to the SEC. This is, in a sense, a little bit similar to the ACC. Of course, the SEC head to toe is a little bit deeper and a little bit more talented in my eyes than the ACC. But I think right now, Florida looks like the odds-on favorite with how well they've played over the last month. And quite honestly, I think you can make the argument they've been the hottest team in college basketball over the last month. Just with how well their guards have been playing on top of the strong front court play they've got in the entire duration of the season between Condon, Hauk, and Chinelu. Now you have Boogie Flynn and Xavier Lee starting to play really well. Xavier Lee had a great senior night performance. They got the depth between Michael Hanlogden and Urban Klazar, and some of the freshmen have started to pick things up, like CJ Ingram. Their transfer AJ Brown's played a lot better recently as well. I think it's Florida. I think they're the deepest team in the conference. I think it's just so hard to beat them when they beat you physically and on the glass and in the interior, and they get so many second chance opportunities. So even though a lot of people do point to their 3-point struggles from shooting beyond the arc, a lot of that can be remedied by grabbing offensive rebounds, and that's what they do a heck of a lot of.
So I like the choice of Florida. I think it's probably the best idea right now. And I know Florida won it last year, and that does imply that Auburn, what was the best team in the SEC last year, did also win it, or didn't also win it. I should say they were the 1 seed that time. So it could imply that Florida is in that same scenario. We're never gonna have a 14 bid, uh, SEC or any other conference of that level. There's never gonna be a conference as top to bottom good as that will ever be. So I can't imply anything similar from last year in that way. And when you compare Florida to every other SEC team that you could bring up, it's not on that level. Like not like Florida, Auburn, Alabama from last year. That said, though, a lot like Duke, if you take down Florida, all hell is breaking loose. Bama's been on a
Yeah.
surge recently. Vanderbilt wants to get its mojo back. They've just been dropping games left, right, and center. Tennessee is sleeping. They are a
Yeah.
sleeper right there. You cannot ignore any Rick Barnes team. I don't care who is in that. You just can't ignore them. And then throw in the herd like Kentucky. Uh, Adams look decent at times. Like
Or Texas in there.
Texas looks great. Like there are runs that do happen in the SEC. They're not as common as other conferences, but they do happen. And if you're gonna ask me, I really don't. I don't want to ignore the opportunity. Like taking when it's Florida versus the field, I'm taking Florida, but it's close. I actually will say it's close on my side.
Yeah, I like all the points you brought up regarding the teams you named. Yes, don't get me wrong, Florida's definitely my pick to win the SEC tournament, but nonetheless, is there room for one of these teams to go on a big run to win this tournament? Yeah, of course. I mean, Darius Acuff at Arkansas, that's a guy that's capable of going off for 50 like we saw a couple weeks back. LeBaron Philon, Aiden Holloway, Latrell Wrightsell, they played great at scoring trio for Bama this year. They get more consistent front court play and they're able to get some more stops on the defensive end of the floor. They're a threat to win it too. And you throw other teams like Vanderbilt, which I don't really see much of a case for. Others will still push for them, so I'll throw them into the mix. But yeah, Tennessee, Jacoby Gillespie has played so well over the last couple weeks. Ada Ment's gotten a lot better as the season has gone on. And Texas, I love what Sean Miller's done in his first year coaching for the Longhorns. And Dalen Swain is one of the best isolation scorers in the country. He gets hot. It's going to be tough to stay in front of him. So Florida's my pick, but yeah, and upsets could happen. One of these teams could go on a big run and win this thing. But let's move on to the Big East now. Last two conferences we talked about, more so of a one-person race. This is more, I think, two-faced. Right now, I think it's pretty clearly between St. John's and UConn in terms of who is going to win the Big East tournament. I do think that there is maybe room for a bid stealer. I mean, how funny would it be? Me and Josh talked about this just before we started recording. How funny would it be if just a week after Kim English is notified that he will be fired at the conclusion of the season, if he goes on a run, takes the Friars to the tournament championship game and wins it at MSG on next Saturday? I mean, what a story that'd be. It'll be pretty similar to Kevin Keats at NC State a couple years back. Not saying they'd go on the same type of run to the Final Four, but nonetheless, they got the scores to be able to do it. Jalen Sellers, who's the other guy? Vandy
Yeah.
transfer. I forget his name.
Jason Edwards, great.
Jason Edwards. Yeah,
Yeah,
thank you.
I won't deny you for a second. Like that team has a great roster, and
Ryan
there's nothing
Neal
to
is
lose anymore. There's nothing to lose for everything to gain. These guys will likely not be wearing the Providence regalia anymore. It's a shame what's happened to this program and to a great roster. But once again, you look at this roster, and I'm not going to say all of a sudden they turn into a NC State like you said before, but there are teams that do this every once in a while. It's not just
Yeah.
them. It's Oregon State from a few years back. It's like you're gonna have random teams that can do that. I'm not gonna imply that a Big East team like that or a Creighton or a Seton Hall that is still a
Georgetown.
theoretical bubble team.
Georgetown's played. I know Georgetown's lost some games, but they played St. John's really tough
No,
on their senior day just a couple
they
weeks
played
back.
UConn real tough as well, home
Yeah, they played
and
UConn
away.
on the road tough. Yeah,
So
I mean, Seton Hall, Nova, those are two teams that can pick St. John's and UConn off. And I gotta say, between St. John's and UConn, I think UConn is more prone to being picked off in one of the early rounds of the Big East tournament than St. John's is. St. John's, I mean, they have, besides the one early loss to Providence at MSG, their only bad loss, I mean, their only other loss in Big East play was to UConn and Hartford. So St. John's doesn't lose to these bad teams, and they usually win for the most part convincingly. I know they got tested on the road at Pfizer Forum against Marquette, as well as a couple other games, but the 32 point, there were 30 whatever point route of Villanova at home following their loss to UConn. And UConn, they've been tested the entire year in Big East play. They've scraped by these teams that, if we're calling for what it is, are not tournament teams. And, UConn has a tendency this year to play down to their competition. If Hurley doesn't have the guys ready, he doesn't have them in a mindset where they're able to get up for these games before the championship Saturday. And UConn definitely is at a threat of getting upset in one of these earlier Big East tournament rounds. In a world where we do get UConn and St. John's for the tournament championship, I think there's going to be the added motivation of just how everything transcended last year with Hurley and the guys that are on last year's team, Caravan, Terrace, Solo Ball, Jalen Stewart, Jaden Ross. I think there's going to be that factor added to it, and I think I would roll with the Huskies.
I like your choice. I'm not going to hate. I probably have a bit of a bias in this one, but I would actually pick St. John's. I think it's just because
I'm not going to argue with you. I mean, yeah,
I think it's a lot of things that you said, but also a lot of things that we've just seen from the Big East in general. I will say St. John's won it last year as the number 1 overall team in the conference. Obviously, the Big East was, well, it's not much better, but it's not much worse.
I'd argue it was better last year than this year.
It kind of was better.
Honestly.
Overall, top-end talent wasn't there in the same way. Like, UConn's likely in a 1 seed unless they don't win it, and Florida maybe wins the SEC or some other shenanigans occur. And St. John's looks like on par for 5, maybe 4 seed if things are lucky for them. I'm not going to say once again that I would expect the upset here, but keep in mind we're playing this on St. John's home court in the Garden.
True.
And we know what happened last time in the Garden when St. John's played UConn. It'll be a more even crowd, and it'll be on a very different scenario than last time. But we've also seen that, yes, St. John's can struggle, but they haven't really lost a game since Providence, and that Creighton game is still kind of fresh. And they very nearly dropped another one earlier in the year, like I think a week and a half ago now, just Seton Hall. And I'm not going to say once again,
just that Saturday.
Yeah, I think it was that Saturday. Yeah, and I'm not going to say that we can ignore those losses, but UConn is a far bigger target on their back than St. John's. That, I don't know if St. John's is a quad 1A game, but I know for a fun fact UConn is. And if you're Seton Hall, if you're Villanova, if you're literally any team that's even considering trying to win, you're going to go for that. You're going to hope and pray that you get that. And I'm saying UConn's vulnerable, but of the 1 seeds right now, they are the most vulnerable. And I highly expect something to happen. And if there is a loss and it's before St. John's even plays UConn, then it really feels like a St. John's win. I'm going to go with that because I really do feel like UConn will slip a little bit. And that's fine. Winning your conference tournament as the number 1 team, it doesn't happen that much as people want to say it does. And it doesn't really matter that much either, especially for UConn. They very rarely win both of those things at once now thinking about it. Right. But I won't extend it that much. I think it totally could be UConn. It's really the flip of a coin. But it's landing on St. John's right now for the time being.
I do want to preface this. I don't know if that there's a conference tournament championship matchup that needs to happen more for the sake of the overall conference than the Big East needing St. John's and UConn to have a third, rubber match at the Garden on Big Fox on Saturday for the Big East Tournament Championship, because just with everything that's been brewing and leading up to this point, we have the chance to really solidify UConn and St. John's as being one of the top rivalries in the sport going forward. I mean, Pitino, Hurley, obviously respect one another, but very outwardly hate each other as well. 2 years back in Pitino's first year with St. John's, UConn sweeps the Johnnies. Last year, Slick Rick and co, they sweep UConn. This year, we have a 1-1 split. And then for it all in the tournament championship, I don't know what more you could ask for from a Big East fan perspective and a UConn St. John's fan perspective too. So anyways, let's move on to, do you want to hit Big 10 or Big 12 now? These are the tricky ones we're getting into.
What do you want to start with?
I was going to leave it up to you. I'm cool with either. Maybe Big 10 first.
Yeah, Big 10 feels like, why not? I actually feel like Big 10's the harder one, but I'll throw it in.
I don't know. Yeah, this one's tough.
I'm gonna go with Michigan, and I don't want to say that isn't like I'm just faulting to the easy choice, because once again, the Big 10 is not necessarily known for having its high seeds win. Last year, Michigan won that, if I'm not wrong, and they were like a 3 or 4 in that rank in that tournament. 2 years back when Purdue went to the national championship, they lost in like the second round to Wisconsin. Wisconsin won that tournament, then lost in the first round to JMU. So it really could be anybody. And keep in mind, there's a lot of teams that really have opportunities here. Illinois wants to get that 2 seed. Purdue wants to get that 2 seed. Michigan State, if they beat Michigan on Sunday and then goes into this tournament and beats Michigan or Illinois or Purdue or any number of them again, that's a 1 seed. That's a 1 seed in my heart. Even like Nebraska. Like Nebraska hasn't been great recently, but they're still on that 2 seed, 3 seed line. They could really force themselves over with the win. And they very nearly beat Michigan at Chrysler. This is not going to be in there. It's going to be Chicago, if I'm not wrong. So very different environment. And if you're going to ask me, it will be very tough. Like Michigan's not, I'm not saying Michigan won't automatically win this thing. A lot of people probably would say that not thinking about it, but there are just so many good teams this year that it's so hard to tell. And we haven't even looked at the buys yet. The first week buys or the first round buys are going to really matter too. Like, I don't know. I really don't know.
I might get bold here if I'm being honest. And I don't say that I can make this pick and have my full confidence behind it, but I might go Wisconsin here.
I actually didn't think you were going to say Wisconsin. I had a sneaking feeling you were going to say Ohio State, which is not crazy. I'm not
Ohio
crazy for
State's
saying
not a
that.
bad pick either. Ohio State is not a bad pick either if you're going bold. I mean, I don't know. I just feel like a lot of the teams towards the top of the Big Ten have major flaws on certain ends of the floor. Michigan State obviously has their offensive fault at times, though they have shot the ball really well as of late, but got into a dicey game on their senior day against Rutgers the other night. Illinois obviously has their defensive issues. It's going to be tough stopping Keaton Wagler on the other end of the floor. Obviously, the Visage brothers, Merkovich, Humbrickhouse, all the height that they have on that roster. Purdue has their defensive faults. Michigan is a team that Wisconsin already beat on Michigan's home floor, keep in mind. I think Wisconsin could run the table in the Big Ten tournament and go on a run
I don't hate that.
between that duo, Blackwell and Nick Boyd. I could get it done and take that momentum, catapult them to go on a big run in the NCAA tournament too.
Yeah, I don't hate that at all. I really feel like once again, we've seen crazy runs. Like I wouldn't call it Michigan a crazy run, but Wisconsin did it 2 years, honestly, on that same type of mantra. Yeah, Wisconsin wants to escape playing a 2 seed in the first first weekend, and then maybe play them in the second weekend instead. You win that tournament, you got a 5 seed, maybe even a little bit higher, depending on how many good teams you win. Because Purdue, Nebraska, Michigan State, Michigan, Illinois, and I guess technically Wisconsin as well are all probably quad 1A wins on a neutral court. That's crazy. Yeah. You could pick up 3 quad 1A wins depending on your brackets.
Incredible. I mean, that's your tournament live right there. If you're on the bubble,
if you're on the bubble, if you're IU, if you're Ohio State, if you're some there's a lot of good bubble teams in the Big Ten right now. I'm not going to say Ohio State wins the Big Ten tournament. Very slim chance. I'm going to be real with you, but we've seen that they beat Purdue. They could probably tussle with a Michigan State or a Nebraska. They probably cannot beat a Michigan, so that beforehand, so Michigan would have to lose beforehand. But I'm going to be real with you. If the Wolverines drop early, which they definitely can, especially if they play that Wisconsin, all hell breaks loose. And when I mean all hell, it's bigger than the other two that I said. It really could just be anybody at that point. So yeah, I'm gonna love this Big Ten tournament. It's probably the best one we've seen in a long time.
I want to make this known. I like this Michigan team a lot, and they are by far the safe pick going into the Big Ten tournament. And Yaxel Lendeborg, I've made this clear to Josh in the past. He is my favorite non-UConn player this year. But still, I think, Ohio State, Wisconsin, Iowa will even throw into the mix behind Bennett Sturts and the job Ben McCollum's done his first year in Iowa City. They're all threats to go on runs in this Big Ten dance.
I like the Iowa was a Bennett Sturts shot away from.
They nearly beat Michigan last time.
Beating Michigan, and they beat Nebraska. I get they haven't played well against Purdue and Illinois, Michigan State, but that doesn't really matter. Once again, those teams aren't being there, and who says they can't change things around? That's a story as old as time. You can get hit down, but you can always come back up again. And if you're desperate, it shows most in the conference tournament. It always does. And the more desperate the team, the better they play. And there's going to be a desperate team in some conference. I'm not saying there's a bid stealer out there, but this is a good year for one. I'm not going to lie.
Most definitely. But let's get into the Big 12 now. Doesn't get much easier going into the Big 12. I'll ask you first, Josh. Who do you got winning the Big 12 tournament?
So this is kind of an easier choice for me. And I know it might not be for everybody, but I'm going to go with Arizona. I feel like this is a very simple one, and just the fact that the field that's around them that could compete with Arizona has not played the way that they have been recently, or that they've just been out. Like JT Toppin or Richie Saunders being out puts down both of those teams. I would say in Houston to haven't played great, and it kind of leaves a lot to be decided with the bubble teams as well. I get it that we've seen, good growths from Cincinnati, Oklahoma State, Baylor, TCU. They look all right, but most of them probably can't compete or beat Arizona on a neutral court. I do think there's definitely a chance that they run into a Darren Peterson Kansas team and Arizona loses that one, which is definitely a chance. And then we start having that conversation about who can replace them. And that could be one that really could go to a lot of teams. But I really feel like Arizona might be more of a slam dunk than we're giving them credit for.
Yeah, I honestly think it's really tough to pick against Arizona here. If I could back another team semi-confidently, I'd probably go Kansas. I know they haven't looked the part the last week and a half, 2 weeks now, with kind of just Darren Peterson not shooting the ball very efficiently. I've seen that every game except one that he's gone for over 17 field goal attempts, Kansas has lost. And the connectivity between the Jayhawks on that roster for Bill Self, it just doesn't seem to be there right now when they were picking up those massive, massive wins in league play. Now, I will throw out a little shout out to Cincinnati. You might have mentioned them, Josh. I kind of forget, but ever since Wes Miller apologized to the Cincy fan base following their loss to West Virginia, they've rattled off a double digit wins, to UCF, Kansas State. You are barely snuck by Utah, They did lose, or the double digit win in Fog Allen Fieldhouse to Kansas. They did lose to Texas Tech, but then they rattled off 2 double digit wins against Oklahoma State and BYU, respectively. This is a team that could go on a little bit of a run. They got some talent. They got bigs who can space the floor. Sean Abayev is one of the under talked freshmen around the country. I know he hasn't had the most amazing stats compared to some of the other star freshmen across the sport, but he still has NBA upside nonetheless. I think since he could go on a little bit of a run, but if I'm playing it safe and if I'm going with what I think will probably end up happening, it's gonna be Arizona.
Yeah, I don't deny the opportunity there. And once again, like I said, we're desperate teams are going to play the best in their conference tournaments. We've seen this before. I can keep saying that day in and day out, but I just feel like Arizona is just like an easy choice right now. It feels weird because when we originally said this before recording, we both felt like it was probably the Big 12 or the Big 10 that'd be the hardest. And looking back on it, I really
Yeah.
don't feel like it's anymore for at least the Big 12. I think Big 10 is by far the hardest. But that will be the tournament that will really decides a lot going ahead.
Yeah, I completely agree. But now that we've touched on all the Power 5 team or conference tournaments, I should say, let's get into some mid-major action. Let's start with the MAC, who is home of the undefeated, at least we got to see. I believe they play tonight at Ohio to finish their undefeated regular season. But nonetheless, that being the Miami, Ohio Redhawks, they've had a hell of a year. A lot of people debating about whether or not they deserve an at-large bid if they do not finish this regular season undefeated, and even if they don't win the MAC tournament. But I'm curious to hear your take on this first. Do you think they're going to win the MAC tournament, Josh?
No, I like it's not a crazy thing to say, but keep in mind we just saw earlier today Belmont, the number 1 overall team in the MVC, a team that honestly before going into this could have gotten an at-large bid. They got eliminated to a horrible Drake team and got themselves put out of any conversation. Such a shame if you're going to ask me, but that's what happens. Miami probably won't have that scenario. They'll likely knock on some wood here, actually. Win against Ohio as of tonight's recording and pretty much lock up their bid, even if they do lose a game in the MAC. But Akron's just been great. Akron is just known for this. John Gross is known for this. This team is just a consistent wagon. I don't care how it goes. And keep in mind, this is what happened last year. Miami, Ohio looked great. They had 25 wins. They walked into this championship game very nearly, though, beat an Akron team about the same quality as the one right now. And I get it that Akron is playing about the same level and Miami, Ohio is playing a lot better, but we want that 2 Big Mac. We want that 2 Big Mac more than anything else. It hasn't happened since the late 90s, if I'm not wrong. Maybe even earlier now thinking about it. I don't even know how long it's been, but this is a generational thing to happen, and I'm crossing my fingers, and I'm not going to wood twice for it. I really do feel like as good of a team Miami has been, I just don't feel like they're going to walk into the tournament undefeated. Although if they do that, that's a 7 seed right there that you gotta fear.
I'm gonna roll with your pick there. As much as I would love to see Miami enter the NCAA tournament undefeated, I think Akron, I think the Zips are gonna take this one. We're gonna see a two-bid MAC. I'm gonna stand firm on my belief that Miami, Ohio, regardless of winning the MAC tournament or not, should be an at-large bid. But Akron, I mean, just offensively the entire year, I think they were at best top 25 offensively. Right now, they stand in the top 50. I think around 44th in adjusted offensive efficiency per KenPom. They have just guys who can light it up. Tavari Johnson's a 20-point per game scorer. Amani Lyles is man in the front court the entire year. He's done a great job. They got guys who can shoot the cover off the ball. And I mean, just offensively, they're there. They do have their defensive faults, and I don't know how far they'll go in the NCAA tournament, pending if they win this tournament or not, and get that auto bid from winning the tournament in the MAC. But nonetheless, I think Akron's probably my pick in the MAC to win it.
Yeah, I think it's a fair one. I'm going to be very excited to watch that.
Yeah, definitely. Do you want to hit the Mountain
Oh,
West
I would
now?
love to do that. And I'm going to go in the same direction. I like Utah State, but I'm going to take a little bit out of their palm. And I like the team, but they just haven't looked great recently. And I'm actually going to go a little bit crazy on this one. And I got to thank Full Court Dash. He's a good friend of ours for honestly his choice in this. I think GCU wins this. I know it's kind of crazy. I'm putting a bid stealer in the Mountain West. It feels like that type of year, and I can't even think about a Mountain West with one bid. I'm out on like San Diego State and New Mexico. Unfortunately, just haven't looked the part, and especially New Mexico just fell apart at the end of that game against Colorado State. San Diego State could maybe make it decent, and it's a team that's all right on paper, but they haven't played the way I expected them to, and I'm just not going to change my mind on that. But GCU they're very, very sneaky. They beat Utah State. They beat San Diego State. I think they've almost beat every top 5 team in the Mountain West right now. And I'm not saying the Mountain West is that bad of a conference, but GCU has at times looked almost power level. Like they have power level guys on their team. And like I feel like it's very hard to ignore how good of a team or how good of a coaching, resume Bryce Drew has had, considering that he's been to like 2, is it? I think it's almost 3 now. Like straight tournaments. I mean, I get it. It was the WAC in that time, but like they've adapted so well. It's kind of crazy pull, but like something about that team just feels like they're going to go on a run. They've been playing hot recently.
I like the pick a lot. You definitely jumped me for boldest take on this video today. But I'm going to roll with Jared Calhoun and Utah State Aggies. I just think that right now, I'm pretty sure they stand top 30 in adjusted offensive efficiency, top 50 in adjusted defense on KenPom. Start to finishing league play, they've just been so good. Drake Allen's just one of the under talked about setup guys in the sport. He's done well running point for them this year. Kind of more of a change of pace guy. But those are sometimes the type of guys you need. MJ Collins has lit it up scoring the ball for them this year. And just offensively, they've been so good, and they've really hit their stride. I don't think they've really been challenged all too much this year in league play. They're 14-5 in conference play. They have dropped some, maybe one or two games to teams that they really shouldn't have. But nonetheless, I think they're going to run the table and win the Mountain West tournament championship. And I do not want to see the Aggies if I'm a team in March. They could be a dangerous 7.
It's another crazy conference year. It's just like, how often are we going to see a Mountain West like this? Which I don't want to ever see a Mountain West like this. No offense. A one bid Mountain West is horrible for the sport in general. I'm a big fan of their conference. So I just feel like it can't be Utah State. I don't want to hate on them, but it just can't be that. I was thinking actually the A10 was going to be a choice.
Yeah. Let's hit the A10.
I'll throw that out there really quick. It's probably going to be St. Louis, but, and I really want to say this because I wanted to say this at the start of the year, but I think we're actually, there's a possibility we get that 3-bid A10. I know everybody was crossing their fingers, but VCU has looked on par and could totally get a quad 1 win against maybe a St. Louis in the A10 and drop a game to George Mason, Dayton, who's looked pretty good. Any random team in the A10 that just happens to be in that like 5 through 10 line. Keep in mind, Duquesne won it 2 years back on no apparent reason, and they could totally do it again for all I care. And the A10 is actually second to the ACC in highest seed line. So once again, not to put down St. Louis, but they played kind of like how I mentioned Utah State. They just haven't played that good recently. They look a little weak, and I kind of want to see that 3 bid, but I'm not fully there in the same way. So I'm gonna go with the Billikens. But
Yeah.
if it happens, you heard it here first.
Yeah, I'm going to go with the Billigans too. Like you mentioned, they haven't played great as of late. I think they did drop that game to Dayton, and they might have lost one more following that. I can't remember off the top of my head. But nonetheless, the Billikens are the deepest team in the A10. They run a legit 9 deep, guys who log an extended amount of minutes. And they have a plethora of guys who are shooting 40% from beyond the arc or higher. So they can shoot the cover off the ball. There's no one man show on this team. Of course, Robbie Vila is going to get all the notoriety and attention, but Trey Green, Deion Brown, Amari McCarthy, they've been good role players this year behind them. They have guys like Brady Dunlap who have Power 5 experience and have accepted a role and being able to come off the bench and contribute to winning, which I think is what makes Schertz's program just so dangerous this year, especially going into the tournament. And that again, that's another like 8, 7, 8, 9 seed that I don't want to run into if I'm a top 1 or 2 seed.
I don't blame you once again. It's these conferences, like, not to hate on the Big Ten, Big East, all that. I'm a sicko. I'm watching these conferences more than anything else right now.
Yeah, I mean, I honestly I don't hate that take on it, but right behind the Big East, it might be A10 for
Might
me.
be A10.
It might be A10.
I love that.
It might go Big East A10, Big 10.
I might flip a few things around, but I like that. I'm so excited for next week. I hope you
I
guys
got
are as well. I hope you guys
I
are
gotta watch
so.
I gotta watch my Badgers, man, and I picked them to win Big 10, so they're third on
I
my
gotta watch
list.
the Antelopes. That means too.
Yeah,
Goodness.
yeah. But I think that's going to be taking care of everything we had for you guys on this preview of the conference tournament slated. Some of them for some of the smaller schools, smaller school league conferences have already begun, but most of them are beginning next week. We want to have it out to you guys ready for that before they get started. But until the next episode, we'll see you all next time.